It is Monday, May 31st, 2021. My name is Jim Vessel, and today I'm joined by my co host, Alex McDougall. Alex, how are you?
Doing good.
Fantastic. Hope you had a good weekend. I know I did. Sorry, guys, for the late show being a few hours late. I was away camping this weekend, and some of you may know if you watched the Hobby Chat stream from Thursday night, I decided to go camping, and I didn't end up getting back till about 45 minutes ago. So I'm a little bit tired. Probably gonna be a little bit slow today, but hopefully we have a good stream. Just a few quick announcements. Just a reminder, guys, we do a Q&A at the end of every show. If you guys want to get a question on the show, really easy. You can leave a comment on the today's show, and we'll answer it next week. So if you're watching us in the future, you can ask it live. Or if you would like to join Deployment Zone TV, which is our exclusive, one of the exclusive networks that we're on, check out deploymentzone.tv.com. Or sorry, deploymentzone.tv. And there's a Discord there where you can ask questions specifically for the show. And then also, I now have a Duplicity Paint Studio Discord. The link is in the show notes. So feel free to join in on that Discord and ask questions in the various topic threads there. There's definitely some places to ask there. So, all right, Alex. It's been I guess it wasn't really an eventful week as far as tournaments were concerned. Not much happened this week. I think we have. Is the ACO next weekend?
Yeah, I think so.
We have the ACO coming up next weekend. Lists are live. For that, I haven't actually had a chance to take a look. Have you had a chance to take a look of any of the lists?
No, I haven't had much interest. I'll be honest. The lists right now are basically just like whatever Dark Elder is going to take. AdMac doesn't get their book for ACO, so
Yeah.
it's not particularly interesting to me right now.
And we didn't have a show last week because I was also in some far off place, I believe. No, because it was a holiday. We
Yeah.
had a holiday here in Canada. I think it was it Memorial Day?
Victoria Day?
Victoria Day. So some holiday of some kind. And yeah, so we're back today, and the show schedule should be back on track moving forward. All right. So, and for some reason I'm on the weird end of my camera, so just this. All right. So let's talk. Hi, Jack the Wolf. Welcome to the chat. Let me see here. For some reason, my chat for YouTube is not working. All right, guys, just one sec. Why is that not working? All right, guys, just one sec. Just trying to get the chat working. All right, Alex. While I get this chat working, let's talk. Well, AdMac is now out, so I guess what are your first thoughts on the final thoughts? Any final thoughts on the AdMac book now that it's been released?
Yeah, that book is nuts. That's going to be another problem for those of us that don't have a 9th edition codex.
Is it as bad as? Is it as bad as? I guess we
Jakari?
thought it was. Yeah. What's your kind of sense of the power level here?
I think it's on par with Jakari, if not maybe a little bit worse. There's some extra movement shenanigans that they can pull off that I think are going to be like super crushing against certain armies.
Right.
Um, the yeah, just the total power level is kind of ridiculous.
Do you feel like any standouts as far as like broken combos, like we saw with Jakari?
Yeah, Goonhammer did a great article about it, about all the buffs you could toss onto like the Vanguard,
Mm-hmm.
do both defensively and offensively. I think that's the biggest problem, is that you can take the Vanguards and the Rangers and just skyrocket their damage output. They
Right.
were showing like I think it was like 4 or 5 buffs, which is getting a little ridiculous. Like it's a little higher than you would expect you could actually get practically in game. But they were showing like a 160 point Ranger squad, like dumpstering Mortarion, which is not okay, regardless of the amount of buffs they get. And then also that unit is sitting on like a 2+ armor save.
Yeah,
Which
I haven't had a chance to take a look, but I mean, from everything I've seen, it looks like it's just as strong as
yeah.
Jakari.
There's also the Taraxi with the Flamers. which currently the stratagem is written where you can land, shoot, act fully, and then deep strike back out. So you can't be interacted with.
That seems fun.
Yeah, it's great, especially when it's Mars and they land and dish out 6 mortal wounds to you for 1 CP.
Is there any I guess any thoughts as far as like a lot of people were saying that they're going to be kind of um the answer to um Drukhari. Do you think they're a hard counter to Drukhari, or how do you think they fit in?
I don't know if they're a hard counter, but they're just really, really good. So, like, but like arguably even better. So the counter is just that it's another busted army, I guess.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's hard to describe as. I mean, I guess they have a ton of really competent small arms fire, which is bad for Drukhari. Like, I would imagine that Ranger squad can get buffed to the tits and just delete like any of the light infantry that gets near it, which is all Drukhari has.
All right. Let's talk chapter approved. I feel like that's the big elephant in the room right now. So obviously we saw some previews last week, and the full release, basically everything's basically leaked at this point as far as missions and points. So what are your initial impressions of let's talk the missions first, and then we can kind of get into the points second. So what are your initial thoughts on the points updates, or lack thereof, I guess?
Um, yeah, no, this book is garbage. That's my thoughts. If I'm going to say this now because eventually we'll get a decent amount of people between YouTube and Twitch and all the rest. Don't buy this book. Don't give GW your money for this. Like, go buy their models. Go buy whatever else. I think the codexes are like, you know, they're super powerful right now, but they are made well. Go put your money there. Don't buy this book. It's a complete waste of time.
And money.
I've already got my points memorized because I got like 3 of them.
Right.
I don't have to write it in a book. I can just commit it to memory.
What yeah, I guess I saw some of the changes for Thousand Suns, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
And I
Which are
guess
kind of just a stopgap right now.
right. And then the other big thing is too, like, they change the Land Raider, I think, and then like a few
Woohoo!
small other things. Like I think a few pieces of war gear changed, like by 1 to 2 points. But in general, the book has stayed the same, and so has Chaos Space Marines for the most part. Um, and so I guess the question is do you think we're expecting too much from these points changes? Because or sorry, not these in general, but from this specific points change, do you think we were expecting too much given the age of the edition, or do you feel like Games Workshop should have been able to put together something a bit more like comprehensive, I guess?
Oh, I think this is excessively lazy. Like, I think this is so bad that the people that were involved in putting this book together should be like reprimanded. I this is we get one a year, and it was literally like darts. Just, well, what changes? We got to change something. Riptides are down 1 point. Yay! Like, it's the biggest pile of shit I've ever seen.
Right.
I honestly think this is the single worst mistake GW has made since eighth edition came out. Because
Yeah,
honestly, I'm pretty GW stan. I've been playing for 20 years, and I think almost universally everything from like the beginning of eighth onward has been pretty friggin' good. Minus maybe like Iron Hands kind of bullshit. But mostly I've agreed with their decisions quite a bit. But this book is like, this is abysmal. This is like, if you've ever played Overwatch, this is when they went to 2-2-2 roll lock and just threw their hands up in the air and said, well, we can't balance it. We don't know how, so we give up.
I never played Overwatch.
Okay, well, you didn't miss much after a while.
Oh shit. Uh, my computer's just going crazy right now.
As long as they can still hear us.
Yeah, hopefully. Yeah, so I guess from my perspective, and this kind of goes back to, obviously I talked a little bit about the chapter approved. I guess the issue with chapter approved in general, and the issue with the way that they're doing their points updates, and it just really reinforces kind of the points I was making, which was this whole model of and I don't want to beat it at horse, although I probably will. This whole model where we basically um, like this, it sounds like you're mentioning to me that Space Marines and Necrons got the most changes. Well, from my guess right, at this point is that this book was probably written, I don't know,
6 months
6
ago.
months ago.
Mm.
And just um, due to the fact that they can't change anything or do anything, um, it just seems like this is just another example of how this model of doing paper updates is just not it's just not good. It's just not useful, and it's not a good way to do points updates.
Yeah, it's too slow. Like I also haven't purchased the app because I don't think the app is very good.
Mm-hmm.
They just dropped the price on it. This update is so bad. It is like pushing me to use the app. Like
Well, how
maybe
so?
if just because maybe if we all use it, maybe they'll say like, "Oh yeah, digital is the way to go," and they might just go to digital.
Right.
Like that's the
I
only solution I can see
I
because they're
have
solving problems from 6 months ago that don't need to be solved anymore, and they're nerfing things that don't need to be nerfed anymore.
yeah, I have my doubts at that how effective that's going to be given their track record.
No, I mean I was kind of just making a joke about that, but like that's how bad this book is.
Yeah. What do you think I guess, like, I don't know, the way I see it, it's like I wouldn't buy this book. And we'll get into the missions in a sec, but the majority of the changes are quite minor. And if you're someone that uses, say, the app or Battlescribe, as far as the points are concerned, they're going to be updated probably pretty quickly. And for an actual points perspective, it's probably not needed. Um, and the other thing too is like I was under the impression we were going to get a big an FAQ, like a summer FAQ at some point. So I'm wondering where that is, or if that's going to come with some additional changes. Do you think that's potentially the possibility?
I mean, maybe, but I think they've already fairly clearly shown that they're not going to change points in that, which I just don't think you can FAQ the game back into making sense with how skewed the new books are.
Right.
Like the new books are just so strong that I don't think you can kind of alter the rules and suddenly you'll give some kind of like a late game life to these codexes that are lagging behind.
Right. Do you think we're going to see any sort of adjustments as far as Drukhari are concerned? And I know AdMech hasn't really hit the field yet, but I'd imagine
No,
within six weeks we're going to see a pretty big skew towards AdMech and Drukhari in the as far as wins are concerned.
no, I don't think their plan is to change anything. And I think I would say that this is like kind of the final thing showing that too. That like they just don't give a shit about anybody who has an eighth edition codex.
Right.
Because this was the time, right? Like if these codexes are coming out and they know they're insane and they know that like they're all insane. Like I don't personally talk to the playtesters, but I'm like one person away from it. Like it is me talking to one person who is directly talking to the playtester,
Right.
and everyone said new orcs insane, new sisters insane. Like these books are all just going to be crazy powerful. So this was the time for them to say like, oh, you've got Tau, GSC, Tyranids, Imperial Guard. Like, okay, well let's try and give you some points so you can at least still play the game. And this basically just GW saying like, if you don't have a 9th edition codex, fuck off, you don't get to play the game anymore.
Right.
I know a competent player playing another competent player just last night, a guy who's played Tyranids forever, and he got tabled turn 2 by EdMech.
Wow. That
Yeah,
seems pretty intense.
yeah.
Do you think that do you think that there like what do you think is causing this power level jump between, say, I guess the last book between we were quite worried about Dark Angels when they came out, and they were kind of quickly usurped, I guess, as a powerhouse book, and they seemed like they had really strong rules on paper. Um, and then obviously Admech and Jakar came out, and from what it sounds like, Sisters and Orcs are getting quite strong. So I mean, as a Thousand Suns player, great. That means hopefully my Thousand Suns are super broken, but I have my doubts. But what do you think's causing this kind of power jump gap between, say, Space Marines, Necrons, and Death Guard and the Marine books to these new books?
I I honestly don't know. Like either it's Games Workshop just saying we don't care, like they're not listening to the playtesters, which is pointless. Then why get playtesters? Or yeah, I don't know. I think that's like kind of the only answer. Like they brought out some stuff, or they just have different writing staff that they're just writing different levels of book. Like I feel worse for Necrons. Like at least if your book isn't out and you're just gonna like get your dick smashed every game, like at least the book is coming, and hopefully when it comes out, you're like, oh, okay, I get to compete now. Like Necrons have already had their ninth edition codex; they're just fucked. Like AdMech is going to roll. If you're obviously, this will come out in 2 weeks, and somebody will say, I played my Necrons in AdMech and won. But we're talking two people that are both like equally skilled players. I think AdMech just crushes Necrons like every time.
Right.
Which, yeah, that really sucks when you already have a codex and there's nothing you get to do about it.
Yeah, it also seems that the release schedule has picked up a bit. Like between the last 3 weeks and next week's pre-orders, we've had pretty hefty pre-orders, list of pre-orders. So I'm curious if their I guess approach is to just get the books out, get caught up on the book releases, and then do something about them all. Kind of once they're all out in the wild. Do you think that could be the
Yeah,
case?
they might have to. Um, maybe it's not so bad if we are getting a book every 2 weeks now, because it sounds like we're getting Sisters in 2 weeks. Like pre-orders are up this Saturday, which means we get it in a week. If we get Grey Knights and Thousand Suns in June, or sorry,
Works
Orcs
in June, late June
or
or early
Orcs.
July.
Let's say Orcs, and then either Grey Knights or Thousand Suns in June. Like Orcs and one of those two books, and then we get Thousand Suns and GSC. Like we might ramp up super hard, but yeah, if it's not that, all it is just 3 or 4 codexes dominating everyone else. Like who the hell's going to go to a tournament for that?
Yeah.
There's 4 Iron Handbooks and everyone else.
Uh, yeah, I'm like, I guess I don't know. Like, in a way, I'm glad that the the books are coming out. On the other hand, though, I'm a little bit worried by Games Workshop's lack of, I guess, communication on like what their plan is with this edition. I know with like 8th edition, we got a lot of, we got a bit of a roadmap as far as like the two per year FAQs plus like a like kind of a balance pass. Um, we haven't really seen anything like that or any communication that that's going to be the case for ninth edition. So I'm really curious if we're going to get something like a lot of people are just assuming we're going to be getting, two FAQs a year and a balance pass, a points adjustment, especially for anything major. But they haven't communicated that for ninth edition. So, and my other concern is that like we're now stuck with this for a year. So, um, are we going to get a points FAQ sometime this year, later this year, maybe like in the fall, or is this it basically? Like, are these points kind of set for the rest of the edition? Because if they are, I just don't think Games Workshop is um aware of what's going on. Bad Dingo says no
No,
Bellacore rules, but like I think we'll get the Bellacore did change. The points did change, I believe, in the chapter approved.
yeah,
He's
he's 360.
360, which means they're based on his new rules. Now I don't know when that, which means like this chapter approved is essentially like in time with that second Book of Rust, which we still haven't seen an announcement for, which is interesting because I thought it would be out at the same time as Sisters.
Yeah, I think it'll be pretty close to that,
So
because that is where Bellacor's rules are going to be.
right, but it's interesting that we did see some nerfs on the demon side. I think the Lord of Change went up like 20 points. Um,
Yeah, like that was needed.
yeah, it just the thing is, so here's the thing. I don't, and I want everyone to understand this. I don't mind points increases in a faction, but if you're gonna look at a faction, don't just look like there's a reason that some like so okay, so let's use demons as an example. There's a reason that people are taking that Lord of Change, and the reason is because he is one of the only efficient and units that are like worth their points. So they're not taking that Lord of Change because he's so overly powerful and just wrecking the game. they're taking that Lord of Change because he's one of the only units that is actually worth the points that you pay. And so,
Yeah.
but Games Workshop looks at that and they say, oh, everyone keeps taking this Lord of Change. And rather than saying, oh, the reason they keep taking it is because it's good value for the points, and so that means the other units are bad value, and we should lower those points so that they're more attractive. They're saying, oh, the reason they're taking it is because it's probably overpowered, so we're just going to increase the points on it. So now it's like not only is it a worse value, but everything else that was a bad value is still a bad value. So it's like you can't just look at the units that are most common and then increase the points on those. You have to look at the overall book and ask, why are people taking those units? And sometimes it's because they're actually pointed correctly. They're actually pointed just right, but because they're the only thing that's pointed right, everything else is overcosted.
Yeah.
That's why people are kind of gravitating towards that. And it's like they don't look at that analysis and say, oh, maybe the reason they're taking that fucking Lord of Change is because everything else is just way too expensive, not not because Lord of Change is too cheap. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. It's not too good. It's just all we have left.
That's all there is in that book. Like
Yeah.
anytime you see Demon List, it's a Lord of Change, and then it's like horrors and maybe some like Nurglings, and then the rest is just kind of like sprinkled in with whatever like jank you want. But like the actual Demon book is just complete trash, and like 90% of those choices are not worth taking. And there's like 4 stratagems in the entire Demon book, even between that and the Psychic Awakening, that are worth using. So you'd think that they would look at that and say, hey, there's the issue here is that things are overcosted. Like, why are chariots still like the thing with chariots, for instance, even, there's no amount of points they can make them that would make them worthwhile taking. Like the rules just don't work, and the models just don't work in the game. Like the gigantic bases, like those kinds of models are just really hard to play with. So
Yep. I mean, I had this conversation with I've got the Hive Mind chat, which is me and Lennon and Colin Sherman and Nanavati, and it's dedicated, and Michael Snyder, and it's dedicated just to Tyranids. And we had a conversation recently about what would it take to get Tyranid monsters back in the game outside of like Swarmlord and Flyrant, and they would literally have to be so cheap that you would just be excited about the wound count. Be like, okay, so this monster is just like 100 points and it's 14 wounds at T8. Yeehaw. Like you're
yeah,
just being like, yay, it exists, and you can push it onto objectives and go, well, you got to try and kill 14 wounds of T8. That's how cheap Tyranid monsters have to be good. They just have to be like almost free, and you're just excited about like their fat ass being on the table.
yeah, it's an issue. All
And
right,
that's so much of all these books.
yeah. And do you think I guess of the changes that you did see, anything notable as far as like you thought was either incorrect or good that was changed?
I mean, I only really paid attention to the Tyranid and GSC stuff. The GSC changes were a joke because they didn't change anything except bikes, but not nearly enough to see them be played in the game. The Gene Stealer changes were nice. I don't know if they're enough. The Swarmlord went down 30 points, which is actually awesome. That's like the one good change that occurred, but it immediately got offset by the Demacarian going up 25. So I got that nerfed right away. Um, and then nothing else changed value. They took the Turvagon down 20 points, which is still unplayable garbage. And this is just kind of the case for like all these 8th edition armies. That's why it was weird to me that Necron's got a bunch of like changes. Like, they already have their codexes. Why are they getting a bunch of changes? And all these other codexes that are like essentially limited to like 3 units got completely left behind and untouched.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting because there was some changes, like for instance like there are some other nerfs that were kind of minor, which was like for instance Thousand Suns Cultists used to be able to take units of 40. Now you
Mhm.
can only take 30. So that was unfortunate. And then certain things like it just feels like it feels like they're being done in anticipation for the new book, but because we don't have the new book, it's not great. So
Yeah. And the other one that just is like, it's almost like somebody was just doing it intentionally to piss people off, was the Tau changes. Like they only got the Riptide, and the Riptide went down 1 point. Can you imagine that? Like, hey, your model costs fucking whatever it is, like 200 points. Here's a 1 point discount. Like, is that? It's just insulting.
yeah, I'm really confused, and I did notice that knights didn't change in general. I think they went down a little bit. It's really hard to tell. I don't have a good change log. I looked at the one that it is put together, but it's not really. It's just really poorly laid out. But that's interesting for me because obviously we know with AdMech getting the ability to bring in Knight, we haven't seen a ton of Knight rules, so I don't think we're going to see the codex for them for a while.
Yeah.
So, all right.
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay, just let me see here.
I'm trying to find a pinned message in Discord about the actual secondary changes because I'm also very disappointed in those.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously in the chapter proved, we did see the for instance, Armin went up 10 points. Like we're seeing the changes for the new book. So Scarab Occult went up to 40 points, and I assume that's going to count for the 3 wounds. And then the rubrics having 2 wounds as well, so they've gone up 3 points for to account for the 2 wounds. But other than that, almost everything else has been left the same. So Zangor's got cheaper down to 2 points in the new book, which is nice. Demon Prince of Zinch got down 10 points, which is also nice. But I think a lot of that is due to the fact that they're going to lose. Like they're going to lose, for instance, like Chaos Cultists are down to 5, but obviously they're going to lose OBSEC. So just like the other ones, it's unfortunate.
Mm.
I still think 10 points for the Infernal Masters 90 points. I don't even know what that does yet. Magnus didn't change, so I'm curious to see what kind of changes we see there. So, all right. Okay, so let's talk missions. So, I think the
Oh,
other big,
gonna be a short talk.
yeah, I think the other big stinker out of the chapter proved was the mission changes, and yeah, the Doctor Doots is saying cultist down to 5 for chaos, but the thing is, um, they're gonna lose OBSEC in the new Thousand Suns book, just like they did in the Death Guard book. So that's actually worse. Um,
Yeah,
yeah, it
that
doesn't really
actually
think.
makes it kind of garbage.
Yeah, and they're down to 30 man units as well from 40, which sucks. So as far as the missions are concerned, we got this big article with all the you know quote unquote not playtesters, Mike Brandt and Nick Nanavati and Steven Box, um, basically espousing how great the changes were going to be and how everything was. And I kind of made fun of this a little bit on the show on Thursday, which was like those articles feel like they were handed to them and told to sign off on them. Like they're so positive, and I'm like, at no point did they mention the primary missions, which was I guess conspicuously absent any mention of primary mission changes in the articles last week. We just got like basically 3 or 4 changes to secondaries, but I think we all assumed that we'd see a lot more changes to the secondaries, and lo and behold, we saw very very little changes to the secondaries. So I guess first let's talk primary missions. What are your thoughts on uh the fact that the primary missions literally didn't change at all? Do you think that's a big dum dum?
Yeah, that's a huge mistake. There's a whole bunch of things that are in there that are horrible and don't make any sense, and they they have all the data necessary. This isn't one of those things where they were just like, oh, not enough missions were played or whatever. Like Peter goes through all of these and makes sure that they're all getting recorded. We have had a bunch of tournaments now. Like we're not in a time where no one's playing. We have played a bunch of these. Like who went through all this effort to print a new book that we're going to pay for, killed a bunch of trees for it, and also looked at the scouring and went, yeah, that's fine. That's not a clunky piece of shit that no one ever plays in tournament.
Yeah.
Not to mention, again, like a huge portion of these in-game secondaries, like the ones specifically the mission-specific secondaries, are all garbage that no one uses. Why
Yeah,
not change them?
it's conspicuous. Like the thing that bothers me a lot is like, because again, this is like they say there's like I guess like it's hard for me to imagine, did they not change these primary missions because when they decided to print this chapter approved, there wasn't a lot of data, quote unquote data, or do you think they didn't change them because they actually think that they're totally fine?
I mean, that's hard to know. I mean, they're not. That's the problem, though. Like, they go to Peter all the time. This is the Falcon, of course, for 40K Stats Center. They go to him all the time for for the data for like what is actually happening.
Right.
And clearly the data shows that like none of these secondaries get used, or if they do, the person loses because they should never have taken them. So at some point you have to look at those and go, I should probably do something with these. And if you just decided I don't want to change these, like, what are you doing? Like, hey, the game doesn't work, nobody takes these. Okay, well we have a new book coming, let's change them. It's really that simple.
Yeah. Do you think like Wally Semi-Fight is just called To the Last now? So they changed some names and they've I guess clarified the wording a little bit. So if units split up, you still get some partial points.
Yeah, but that's not really a change to the mission objective. All
Yeah.
that really is a clerical error fixing janky bullshit.
Right.
Like, oh, if you split the unit, now you have to kill two separate units. That's really challenging and weird. And sometimes there's like armies that can like like Necrons or Orcs stuff where you can like recycle units, and all that is like a clarification. That's not actually a change in the ruling at all.
Right. Yeah, I don't like the change to domination. Um because it means
It's
that
already really hard.
it's already really hard, but it just means that like on certain missions it doesn't really make much difference, like on five objective missions, because but what I don't like is that because before you had to score, I think you had to hold more than half, I believe, so you could never take it on six objective missions. It just never worked, I believe. But now it's
Mm.
just you have to hold three or more and more than your opponent, not more than half.
Yeah,
So it
three
makes it
and
useful
more
on
than your opponent.
six objective missions, which is nice. But I guess with the primaries, I don't know. I think like there were certain missions that just weren't good, especially ones with four objectives. I think they should have all gone to a hold 2 for 5. It makes the game a bit more interactive, personally. I don't like the ones where you just hold 1 for 5, 2 for 10, because especially on missions where like that's fine for missions where there's four, but on missions where there's 5 or 6, it also makes the game non-interactive, and it makes it really easy to just get 40 points.
Mm. Hmm.
Um,
I can understand that argument. I don't necessarily agree for all of them because
right,
I think they need to look at the data and see how it works again. Again, we have all the information. I think some of the ones with like the layout is that on five there's things that are like a little closer. Like maybe we leave those as one, but I agree that most of the sixes should be hold two.
right. I just
If
don't
there's
understand. Yeah.
six on the board, you've got a lot of ability to get to two fucking objectives.
So the problem, and then my problem with psychic secondaries has remained, which is like you're giving up your entire psychic phase to do that action. And the stronger psychers don't actually get any benefit. So like whether I have Magnus doing the action or a Zangor Shaman doing the action, they both give up their entire psychic phase. So the
Yeah,
whole like first that means then you need to bring like a very cheap psyker just for the purposes of being your action monkey, essentially. And second, like um the requirements as far as where they have to, the fact that it can be denied and it's not automatic is a problem. Like I don't know
yeah.
why they introduced that mechanic. Like if you're gonna have it be denied, then let them cast it in addition to, right?
Hmm.
Um, and then I was hoping for, and I think I mentioned this last week, I was hoping for a larger change to the action mechanic, where it was a little bit less, I guess, like
All
detrimental.
or nothing.
Yeah, like I would have liked it where it's like if you move that turn, you can perform the action but not do nothing else. Or if you didn't move, you can still potentially shoot or psychic do other things. Like there's just maybe like there's I don't know if movement is the right way, but I just wish it wasn't an all or nothing affair. Because I feel like I don't like the idea that it just takes units out of the game, especially for some of these actions that require you to do them 4 or 5 turns. You know,
Yeah.
a lot of them require 4 turns minimum to max, which means you're putting points in your list that aren't going to do anything, um, because you don't want like your Magnus or your large monsters doing those psychic actions. You want something really cheap. So you're just playing the game down 90 points.
Hmm. Another problem that they had is they actually made deploy scramblers worse. I didn't really realize this until I played it recently, but if both people take deploy scramblers, you're
Right.
actually fighting over the quarters. So, like, if I get two of the quarters and you get two of the quarters, then we both just get 4 points, and we don't like. I don't like. Now those quarters are occupied with whatever the hell the things are supposed to be, but you can't actually max the objective. And I know that sounds fair. Like, okay, well, both people got 4 points, but it's even worse for the armies that are weaker. Like deploy scramblers and line breaker and engage on all fronts. Those are the ones that the armies that don't really have a shot at like tabling their opponent or like outshooting them or like taking board control because the newer codexes are so strong. So if you're a newer codex and you have your uh, your specific codex secondary, which are usually really strong, and probably another one that your overtuned army can just accomplish, and you know your opponent is going to have to play a game where they have to just like avoid you, then they just go, oh, I'll just take deploy scramblers too and fuck your secondary over.
Right.
So I get two 15s, you get like 12 out of engage. You have to take 1/3 secondary that you probably suck at because welcome to being like a have not army. And also I'm gonna steal your 12 points from you on your other secondary because I'm already getting 30 secondary points. So you're just screwed.
Yeah. And then the other thing I would say is like we didn't see any changes as far as max like any restrictions on non chapter proof secondaries. Like I think we mentioned as well, hoping to see maybe a limit of one codex secondary, or some sort of change to equal the playing field a little bit. But as it stands right now, Space Marines can take 2 Space Marine secondaries, which I think is
Yeah.
not good. And then I assume like in some future version of the game, if you're playing Soup, you could probably take multiple. Actually, maybe not because I know in the Death Guard book, if you take Soup, you can't take the Codex secondaries.
Mm-hmm. You
So
wait though. You wait. It won't be written like that for Eldar or something.
yeah,
You'll play Craft World Eldar and Drukhari, and you'll get Drukhari secondary and Craft World Eldar secondary.
but yeah, I would have liked to see them limit that to 1 and or the mission secondary. So it's like 2 from the main book and then 1 from either the mission or from the Codex.
Yeah. Yeah, they should have made the secondaries like one of your casts, so
Yeah,
you don't just
exactly.
completely nerve a cycle
Because
turn.
certain spells, like for instance, like Thousand Suns have they have ability to cast extra spells. So they could potentially use a stratagem. Like say you have a caster with 2 casts, you could potentially or 1 cast, you could potentially just cast 1 and then use a secondary to stratagem to cast another spell and do the action. But a lot of the good psychers have 2 casts. Most psychers have 2 casts. Like I think even Space Marine ones have 2 casts. So yeah, so that would have been a lot better if we could have gotten something like that. Um,
Yeah. There just wasn't enough change. I was hoping for like a breath of fresh air. We'd get new secondaries, new missions, new like all sorts of new stuff. It would be like a refresher, even if they didn't do anything for the points, which they didn't. But like, let's say that this was a scenario where we get a bunch of new missions and new cool stuff and mission like secondaries and stuff, and they
right.
didn't change the points. At least it's something new. I get to lose in a new way rather than just the same old shit is happening.
Yeah. All right. Well, what do you think? Okay, so overall, guys, I think the consensus is that chapter proof is a bit of a dud, I guess would be the good the soft way to put it.
Mm-hmm.
So I would not recommend buying this book. I would, if you need the mission updates, I'd grab them from like Wikipedia or something like that. And as far as the points are concerned, I mean, if you're using the app or Battlescribe, they're going to get updated automatically. Um, so yeah, I just wouldn't recommend buying it. This is a do not buy as far as I'm concerned. Um, that's the only way I think as a community we're gonna like Games Director is gonna get the message that when they release crap, that like we need to vote for with our vaults as much as we can. And I know there's gonna be a lot of people that are gonna blindly buy it. I almost bought it. Um, and it sucks because I want those books. I want that book. I want to be able to have an updated version of the book. But the thing is, here's the thing: even my current chapter proved is out of date, right? So
Yeah.
what's the odds that I buy this book and within I don't know 2 months
So,
there's like
yeah.
another FAQ patch for it where they have to change some of the missions and I have to carry around a piece of paper anyways. So at that point, I might as well just do that to begin with. Have a binder with printed out my missions and off we go. That way we can keep it most up to date. So if Games Workshop's not going to give us a digital copy, we're going to create our own that we can update.
Yeah. Turn Tokumonsta Missions is another thing that should just be in the app. See, that's a thing I didn't know. I didn't know that the missions weren't in the app, and the fact that the missions aren't in the app is retarded.
Yeah.
That's the stupidest shit. If I'm using an app specifically from them and I'm paying a monthly fee for it, it should have all the things I need to play the game. It's
Yeah,
not
I
hard.
didn't realize they weren't in the app either. So now that they aren't, it's like that's even one more striking at the app.
What's the point? Um, what was There was one more thing I was going to say about these changes. Oh, right. Another good kind of condemnation of this is that they got rid of I think it's cut off the head,
Right?
which was the kill the warlords uh, secondary, which was so bad that they just deleted it. Like,
Yeah.
think about that. If these missions are supposed to be the things we're playing, and they're realizing that this one is so fucking garbage that they just went, yeah, we need to get rid of this. No one ever takes it, and clearly we did it completely wrong. That's horrible.
Yeah, it's kind of like I don't know. It's just really sad. So we'll see. I mean, I have a feeling that this remaining tournament year is going to be a bit of a shit show, given as events start to open up. I feel like we're going to see pretty wild swings of balance as codexes drop, and the new meta is essentially going to be the new books, everything post Yukari. That feels like
Yeah.
that's going to be the A tier, and we're seeing some tech which we can kind of switch to now out of some of these new books that are going to make some of the other top dogs really bad. So, for instance, let's talk Sisters. We've seen some previews for their new book, including stratagems and abilities that lets you ignore invulnerable saves against whole units. So Harlequins are going to go bye-bye when facing Sisters.
Yep.
There's a kitty there's a kitty in the background, so I can hear.
Yeah. Yeah. It's almost 9 o'clock, so she's like, "I'm fucking hungry. Let's go."
Yeah, so what do you think
Um,
so far? Let's talk the two big things. We've seen some Sisters previews of some of their miracle powers. So what do you think initially of those rules and how they're going to slot into the kind of competitive circuit, I guess?
I mean, fight last is really strong, and a I don't know what miracle range means because that's what it is in the preview.
Right.
I don't know if that's going to be within an inch, like you got to be base to base, or maybe there's some range that changes as the the turns progress. But the ability to just turn off somebody's invulnerable save without a roll,
Right.
we've only ever seen that come from spells. So typically, most armies have an answer.
Yeah, so
Um,
they mentioned in the article that miracle range essentially is the dice that you use. So if you use say a 1, your miracle range is 1 inch. So you give up a
okay.
1, and if you use a 6, it's 6 inches. So the higher the miracle dice that you use, the longer your miracle range, which means it's advantageous to use higher miracle dice if you need to say, for
Mm-hmm.
instance, like want that 6 inch aura versus a 1 inch aura. Now, in some cases, that might not matter, especially if you have multiple units piled in. One might be fine. Um, but like if you just because if your character is within 1 inches, but also having being able to extend it 6 inches is also really strong because that's a pretty big bubble, and
That's
you're gonna be able to get
huge.
touched units that you're not even in combat with something like that. Like run up behind your unit that just charged in and then fire that off.
Yeah. And the ability to, again, the fact that it can't be stopped. Like with Death Hex, at least you're like, okay, hopefully I can deny this. Hopefully I've got some kind of, like, most armies right now do have some kind of anti-psyker, whether you're Dark Angels and you've got Watcher in the Dark, or you're Tyranids and you've got Kronos. Like
Yeah,
there's a rebuttal to this. This is just, no, that unit dies. Like, you
yeah.
know how Mortarian's really tough? Well, he's isn't fucking tough without an invulnerable save.
I think my favorite, and then the other thing is we still haven't seen the mechanic for getting miracle dice and if there's been any changes to it. But if they have it, if it's let's say it's unchanged, miracle dice are just so good. They're an incredibly strong mechanic. And once again, we're also seeing another fight last. So I think we talked about this in a previous show, but like this fight last mechanic seems to be their new favorite thing this edition. Everyone's getting some sort of fight last. And I just,
Mm-hmm.
as I said in the last show, I just don't like it as a mechanic. I think having like one or two of it across the entire game as a unique ability that like one or two armies get, I think is fine. But when every army gets a fight last, it kind of removes a lot of the, I guess, a lot of the like that it's special. Um,
Yeah. Well, they're even talking about that right now with like the general like power level of the game. We're like, well, if everyone's fucking supercharged, then no one's supercharged.
Yeah. The other thing I have an issue with, and this is actually kind of funny, in their Defenders of the Faith stratagem, or sorry, Invalid Shield Wall. I don't know if you noticed this, but it says use a shot on the start of the fight phase, but then the flavor text says um, that their shields are we'll see bullets, bolts, and last pistols peel off them like rainwater. So it's like referencing shooting attacks, but it's used in the fight phase. So it's like it's just like I don't know, it's just like standard GW, like not really understanding their own rules and just built and like doing a lot of hyping, but without actually like making rules that like the fluff to match the rules.
Yeah.
It did pain me to also see some Alpha Legion looks like fighting the sisters in one of these pictures and realizing that those Alpha Legion just like it's like 5 cast Space Marines and I'm just like, oh, they're so bad, they're not gonna have any chance against these sisters. The one nice thing though about those is that they're not free, the blessings. Um,
Hmm.
but sorry, they're not free in to take, but they're not stratagems, the blessings. You just use them, right? So there's no CP cost, for instance. So for Word of the Emperor,
Yeah,
for instance,
you're paying
it's just
points.
free, and then if you want to make it miraculous, then you can use the miracle dice.
Yeah.
But like I mean, I would definitely pay Word of the Emperor. I mean, 40 points is a lot of points though for that once per game.
Hmm.
Yeah.
But there's a bunch of them in there. There was like 6, 7, 8 kind of thing.
There's
Like,
6 that they've got listed here from 15 to 40 points. So
yeah. So I mean, you're just gonna use the one that's right for the meta,
yeah,
just like any kind of warlord trader spell. Like, oh, is no one bringing uh, invulnerable saves right now? Okay, well, I'll leave Death Hex at home. It's the same thing for this, whether
yeah,
you're going to use it or not. And but let's be real, invulnerable saves aren't going anywhere. Whether it's Vanguard vets and Marines, a bunch of sister stuff, Dark Eldar in combat, um, like all the top dogs right now are all relying pretty heavily on invulnerable saves.
right. All right, let's talk orcs. We saw T5 orcs in the preview, and then Strength 5, Toughness 5 orcs as far as the Beast Naga boys. So, any kind of quick thoughts on that?
Toughness 5 boys, I assume that's going to be just like a universal push. Like it's not just going to be the regular boys; it'll be tank busters and commandos and everything else. Toughness 5 orcs is kind of insane.
Right.
Um, some of the better codexes right now might not give a shit. Like some of those things just it doesn't matter if you're toughness 5 with a 6+ armor save. Like witches with 3-roll wounds will probably still just butcher through you. But for the rest of us that don't have any codex, like that was my only answer. If I'm fighting orcs, I need gene stealers and devour gaunts. And orcs going to toughness 5 means that my devour gaunts kill like 10 orc boys instead of 20.
Yeah. It'll be interesting. I mean, the lack of real save and one wound, I still think they're going to die pretty quickly. Um,
Depends on KFF and pain boys.
yeah.
T5 with a 5+ invulnerable save and a 6+ feel no pain is actually pretty damn
Do you think
durable.
they should have gone to 2 wounds?
No, no, I actually like the toughness 5 change. Like as much as I'm bitter about it just being another army that's going to kick my ass, um, toughness 5 I think is an interesting change because they have at least been trying to make these things thematic. Like Necron's got 1 wounds, but reanimation protocols generally speaking got better.
Right.
And Death Guard got their -1 damage. Like everyone's getting tougher in a fairly distinct way, and I think Orcs going to toughness 5 is a cool, distinct way for them to get tougher.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see what we see with the rest of the book. For me, it feels weird. Like they said, everything went up a toughness, so I think Grots are toughness 2 currently, and I think they went up to toughness 3. Sounds like. It just feels weird for me that orcs are tougher than Space Marines. I don't know from a background perspective. So as much as I think from a gameplay perspective, it's probably fine. It does feel a little bit odd for me that they're they're tougher than Space Marines with power armor.
Yeah, they're just big and bulky and a lot of meat.
Yeah, they just don't
I'm
die.
fine with it.
All right, let's get into some Q&A. Let me just pull it up here. So I think I mentioned at the start of the show how you guys can answer questions, ask questions. We'll get into some Q&A here. All right, so first question comes from Zombie Sue, who's saying that with how powerful incursors infiltrators can be with move blocking and getting first turn charges, the prevalence of such tactics used in many well-placing ultra instrument lists, given their replay stratagem, why do we generally not see other chapters running similar strategies but using Phobos characters in the Warlord trait Lord of Deceit, which enables 3 Phobos units to redeploy? Um, I think the big part is just the Phobos units outside of that ability. aren't great. They're just quite expensive. Whereas with the Ultramarines, you're using things like Invictor Warsuits, which are quite strong on their own, and they're really good points value. Like they have really decent close combat, good shooting, and they, like so that's why I think you're seeing it versus um, Phobos, which is basically just characters and then the infiltrators and cursors.
Reavers.
Yeah. Um, so I think
Yeah,
that's
I
probably
think part of it is like price. Like move blocking is great, but those units aren't particularly cheap.
yeah.
Like they need an escape route, like with Ultramarines, where you can pull them back out of being forward deployed. So, because if they don't trade, right? Like, or sorry, they don't trade up. Like you can move block, but most likely whatever they killed is less than their value.
Yeah. And the
You're
other
kind
thing
of just feeding your
the
opponent
other thing too is like
good
incursors and
stuff.
infiltrators are basically just they have special guns which are not that great, and then but like the big problem I find with like things like incursors, infiltrators, a lot of these specialty troops is the lack of special weapons, and like you can't take thunderhammers or power fists on any of the sergeants. Um, so in close combat, they just don't have like they have mediocre guns, which they can't improve, and their close combat is pretty mediocre because there's strength four, like two strength four attacks, 2 to 3 strength four attacks each. So when you charge them, they die pretty quickly, and they're not really going to get a lot of like power to fight back. So
Mm-hmm.
Gasby asks, Jim Russell, do you ever go to narrative events? And if so, how do you go about choosing your army? No. Although I will say every competitive event is a narrative event. So if you I firmly believe that for me, narrative events, like if you mean if I play Crusade, I don't. But I personally think that like you can turn any game into a narrative event by just talking about like making it up. Like that's essentially what narrative is. It is you making up a story to go along with your game. And you can do that for any type of game. So you can do that at a tournament, and you can do that at a Crusade level event, or you can do that at a whatever, right? So I often do like I'm not like the most narrative player as far as like sitting there and writing like a long story, but I definitely like I guess I don't know how to describe it, but like I definitely like role play along cool stuff that happens in the game and come up with like cool like visuals and like storylines to go with like certain things that happen in the game, right? Like a certain sergeant might have killed like a bloodthirster, and I'll maybe like talk about that really cool event and how like you know the lone sergeant on the hill, held his ground against the bloodthirster and killed him. And then maybe I'll promote him to something else, like in my army. So I kind of run my own narrative, like in my head narrative, I guess. I don't know, Alex. Like, do you ever kind of do something similar where you kind of add a narrative element to games that you've played at all to kind of
Uh,
help them be a
Um,
little bit more like interesting?
I'm not always specifically thinking about it, but I mean, every dice roll kind of tells a little bit of a story, and sometimes something happens. I've given like particular paint jobs to stuff.
Right.
Certain character knocks something out that's like way above its weight level. I'm like, yeah, he'll get some stripes on his shoulder pad and stuff. I have been to a couple of narrative events,
Yeah.
and usually I know what that means is we're not expecting like the true like dick punch competitive
Right.
lists, and playing Tyranids, usually that means I'm bringing like a monster mash list. I'm gonna have some fun. I'm gonna bring an army that's not that great, and it's gonna be really ridiculous. It's gonna have like 9 monsters in it, and that's my entire army.
Right.
So
All right. So Sir, I don't know. Sir for Dragon asks. So tomorrow, I'm doing a show, Politics and Plastic, around IP theft, recasting, um, basically like 3D printing. So that whole sticky kind of area that is like kind of the unspoken. Um, well, Alex thinks it is spoken, but I think it's unspoken. That people don't really talk about whether or not they commit these crimes. And I want to kind of talk about the ethics of it, and even just what I mentioned, which is go to Wikipedia and get your chapter approved there. So I'm going to be doing a show tomorrow at 6 p.m. on that whole subject and like whether it's ever justifiable, in what cases it's justifiable, is it stealing, is it not, should we care, right? Is it okay to do? So that's why there this question comes from. But basically, he asks, um, he basically says GW stole their IP from other places many years ago, including Space Marines from Dune, and obviously, and so on. And obviously, like a lot of the old fantasy tropes come from, like, for instance, Tolkien. Um, so I'd say at this point the GWIP has, I guess, um, like strayed far enough from those properties that it's not really the same. And yes, the word Space Marine is also exists in something like Aliens, right, or Dune potentially. And then obviously with Tyranids, like we have very similar, like the Zerg, for instance. Now, who created those properties? I mean, I think it's hard to say, especially in their current form, because like the Tyranids that came out at the time of, for instance, StarCraft, are not the Tyranids that exist today. Like the models are very different. The lore is probably very different. So it's really hard to say, kind of like whether I think Games Workshop deserves is it an eye for an eye, I guess, in this industry where it's like Games Workshop stole the original IP and so we're fine stealing IP from them. I mean, there's there's copyright courts to decide those kinds of things. So I don't really have an answer for that. I think ultimately I think it'll come down to a case by case basis, and what you're comfortable with as a consumer. So not everyone's going to feel comfortable, for instance, like using a site like Wikipedia for whatever reason. And it was funny actually, Alex, in our BC40K League chat, someone had asked about some rules questions, and I was like, "Oh, just go check out Wikipedia." And they're like, "Oh, we didn't know we could link it here." Like they were very like scared to like link the link. And I'm like, "No, it's fine. It's not like I'm publishing that information. The information's out there. It's available.
Mhm.
So why not use it, right? Like use it. Go use it." Now, whether that's like stealing, I mean, that's not for me to decide. And well, obviously, well, I guess maybe it is because I'm going to talk about it tomorrow. But what are your thoughts on kind of like the IP in general and you know,
I mean, it usually depends on how obvious it is. It also is different in taking and modifying an idea and then literally just physically copying an exact replica of somebody else's shit.
right?
Like when you 3D print a Space Marine, you're just like, I'm taking that and I'm turning it into this, and it's very obviously a perfect exact replica of that, as opposed to like, well, they wrote about aliens, and then we wrote about aliens, and our aliens like kind of look similar. It's the difference between inspiration and like actual theft. But I think 3D printing something is pretty clearly different than like drawing an alien that looks something similar to like what uh, H.R. Giger wrote,
Yeah.
right?
Well, I guess, and this is something that I'm gonna probably dive deep into tomorrow. But like, if I draw a picture, me personally, of a Space Marine, and I post it and I don't sell it, that's not copyright infringement. That's my artistic uh like expression, right? So I can draw a picture of a Space Marine and publish on my say art page, and because it's like counts as like I guess like an artistic expression. So is that any different than me 3D printing a model and keeping it for myself and not selling it?
I guess you're not buying any art from them.
Yeah, like if I get an STL now, who makes those STLs? That's a whole different thing. But if I get an STL of a say a Space Marine and I print it for my own personal collection and I make no money off it, for me personally as the printer, the person that makes that, is that wrong, or is it just wrong to sell is the person that's selling the STL committing the crime, and me as the person that's using the STL, I'm in the clear, right? That's kind of where I come from. It's like, well, who's like, um, especially for instance, if yeah, so it's a complicated subject, but it just begs the question for me, which is like, I can do all sorts of fan art, and there's lots of fan videos that use James Bond IP for like different types of you know, for fan use, I guess. Like there's fair use laws, and so the question is like, if I print something for myself without making a profit on it, that should fall under fair use, and as far as
Yeah,
copyright.
I don't think this is the time or place to get into this. You should do
Yeah.
this on Thursday.
I will be talking about
This
it
is a
tomorrow, guys.
very deep chat.
I will be talking about it, but I guess you're gonna see where I'm gonna go with the conversation. So tune in tomorrow. All right, a few more questions here. What up? Where'd it go, guys? Okay. All right, next question. Burster asks me a very long question about a rules interaction between Master of War and Monka. We're not going to do rules questions on the chat, guys, because A, we're not any sort of authority on rules. And B, if we get it wrong, I don't want you to take it to your TO and say, well, Jim said, because I have really no jurisdiction. So what I would say is read your latest FAQs, and then whatever event you're playing in, ask your TO. They're going to be the ultimate arbiter of um, kind of the rules there. So I wouldn't, yeah, I don't want to hesitate, especially one that's complicated with a lot of different stuff. I don't want to answer rules questions because that's not really the point of the show. So I'm not even going to read your question, unfortunately. So yeah, so that's all the questions for this week. Alex, any kind of final thoughts for the audience? Any questions in live chat for those of you that are watching? Now is the time to ask them, or forever hold your
Don't
peace.
buy chapter approved 2021.
Yeah,
Solidarity.
That's the moral of the story of Competitive Corner today is do not buy chapter approved 2021.
No.
Let's hope that.
Come at me, GW.
Yeah, let's hope that we do see something from the FAQ department, and hopefully with Sisters out, I'm sure we'll talk a lot about Sisters, but shame on you, Games Workshop, for producing a subpar book. Is kind of my final thought. So
I will gladly buy all the product you produce that's any good.
yeah, well, I think that's and I said this on Thursday shows as well. It's like I want to support good products, and I want to reward Games Workshop when they do good with my hobby dollars.
Yep.
But
there's thousands of points. Oh, son of a bitch, sitting over there of Gene Stealer Cult.
Oh god,
like they've got my money, but you gotta make something that I want to buy.
aren't you ever scared your cat's gonna jump up there and like smash everything?
Nah, they're pretty good.
There's a question in chat. Even though I just said I'm not going to answer rules questions, there's a rules question in chat, which I can answer because I actually know the question to this. Answer this, which is, can Zangors warp him after using dark matter crystal? And the answer is no. So in general, and the reason I'm able to answer this is because there's actually a rule in the book that answers this question regarding reinforcements. So any unit that redeploys during either through deep striking means or redeploys during the turn, whether it's through dark matter crystal or strategic reserves or some other ability that lets them redeploy, they count as reinforcements. And reinforcements units cannot move due to any other means outside of charging, consolidating, and piling in. So they cannot do any sort of move. So that includes psychic powers, that includes other stratagems, etc., etc. So.
And I think you can specifically answer that because you are actually the reason that I got fucking answered.
Maybe.
I remember you went on a crusade about like this needs to be dealt with like before LVO.
Yeah.
And I applaud you for doing that because it was stupid and it was only not mentioned specifically for dark matter crystal.
Yeah. The other thing that I got FAQ'd was the so in the old, before they FAQ'd this, the way the extra relic stratagem from the Chaos Demon book read was you just could give it to a Chaos Demon character. And so I was able to give the skull, I think it's called Skull Taker axe from the Demon book to a Khorne Chaos Space Marine Demon Prince. And I showed that to Robin Crutis at Adepticon because he was like helping check lists, or they're like checking lists at Adepticon, and I was like, yeah, I can do that, and I like showed him, and he was like, huh, okay, all right, and like obviously the next FAQ got fixed. Another question, Isante asks if Orcs and Sisters are super strong, will you guys be skipping tournaments until shit gets more balanced? Definitely not for my case. Like I'm not gonna. The game will always be in a state of imbalance, and I'm not gonna like not play games and not play tournaments due to that. And just because it's imbalanced doesn't mean these armies are unbeatable, right? So I know with Jakar, we've seen their win rate drop to around 68% ish. They're still pretty strong, and obviously,
Called it.
obviously, what?
I was like, it'll go from the 75 it currently is, and it's gonna go like right around 70.
Yeah, which is still very problematic. It's not. It's
Oh yeah,
not like
no, that's not
yeah,
okay.
it's not okay. I definitely won't be. In fact, we recently got confirmation that Attack X which is one of the big VC tournaments, is on. So I'm very excited for that. I'm sure I'll see Alex there. And also, it looks like a few other events locally are on. I bought my LVO ticket, so I'm excited to head down there. And I'll hopefully see some of you guys there. And I also have a ticket for the Las Vegas team tournament, which I'm not sure if I'll actually make because I'm not sure the border situation. And I'm trying really hard to make it out to Charity Hammer, which is best in faction, but it's looking like probably 60% no go just due to the borders. So we'll see. Okay, last question we're going to take is K-Pi Hachigo. This is for you, Alex. Alex, would you like Blood Coven to be a single HQ or Supreme Commander in the future GSC Codex?
Which here's I hope it's not shoveled into Supreme Commander. That book needs a full rewrite. Get rid of that strat. Get rid of everything else. Burn that book down and start from the ground up. I also think that the question we have here for hot dogs or tacos is interesting because I would argue that a hot dog is a taco.
Very, very controversial take. I so I think in general I'm a taco guy, but sometimes there's some hot dogs just hit a certain way sometimes. Like when you're in a mood for a hot dog, especially with like a good barbecue hot dog, nice little char on it, mustard, some nice
Hot dogs after a swim at the beach.
yeah.
Totally different.
Like
That's a different kind of hot dog.
hot dogs like is a mood, you know? Like so
Yeah.
all right, guys, that is it for the show. Sorry it was a little bit kind of disjointed and slow today. My brain is still recovering from a weekend of alcoholism. So I will see you guys tomorrow night, Tuesday at 6 p.m. for Politics and Plastic. And yeah, we're back to regular streaming schedule. I'll be posting the schedule on my Instagram, JimOV_paints. Also, I will have the YouTube community abilities unlocked soon because I passed 1,000 subscribers recently, so I should get some additional functionality where I'll be able to post the schedule there as well. So make sure to tune in there. Make sure to give us a thumbs up, like, and subscribe. And Alex, where can they find you on the internet if they want to follow your exploits?
Uh, Not really anywhere. I'm pretty silent. You guys can come check us out at Art of War. That's where I do most of my stuff. We got the Discord there, and come talk the very top of tech.
That's right. So check that out, and check out all my shit as well, which I've already plugged 1,000 times. So with that said, happy Monday, guys, and thanks for tuning in. Bye.